Buenos días con todos.
Good morning, everybody.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Please be welcome to this third session of the Energy Week in representation of, in behalf of OLADE and those who are organizing this event, the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Mining of Uruguay, IRENA, the IDB. I would like to welcome you all. We're going to be talking about a very important topic when we are talking about energy. During the previous sessions, we have been discussing issues that were also relevant, like gender, new technologies, hydrogen, the integration. We have actually developed a panel for regulators and operators, so we're moving forward towards the assessment of the different topics. There is one topic, however, that deserves a special attention from, and what I mean is that this is something that everyone working in energy needs to pay attention. What is energy efficiency? This is very important because even though the region is making very important progress in areas such as the incorporation of renewable energies, unfortunately, indicators show us that in energy efficiency topics, we have actually slowed down the pace that we were having in the past. So this calls for our attention to maintain progress and to be able to manage our consumption in an efficient way throughout the different energy efficiency areas. This is why we have developed this panel where we're going to have top-class speakers, and I'm going to now give the floor to Andrea Haynes. She's going to be moderating this panel. Andrea, please be welcome to the stage. And thank you so much. Thank you, Medardo. Thank you, Olade, and the organization for inviting me to moderate this panel. I'm going to now invite the panelists, Lucia Spinelli from the World Bank, Ignacio Santelice from Chile Foundation, Monica Gasmori from UNESCO Chile, Florencia Terán from the Energy Secretariat from Argentina, and Fitzgerald Cantero from the National Directorate of Energy in Uruguay.
Bueno, un poco como comentar.
So as Medardo mentioned, the topic that that we're going to be discussing within the energy agenda to reach our climate and sustainable development goals, we talk about optimizing and use energy in an efficient and intelligent way and contribute in the reduction of greenhouse gases with the reduction of the local emissions in order to improve the quality of air and have a positive impact in the health of people. This also improves the access and to new job positions, and it also creates new jobs. So all the benefits that energy efficiency brings, even though it has a lot of benefits, we see that there is a difficulty in capturing all these benefits in the region. So the idea here is to get together and discuss which were the good practices, which were things that proven good results, and share the experiences and the lessons learned so other colleagues in other countries can do something differently. And we're going to discuss what we will do in the future. We will be also talking with about some references, specific reference. Lucia will share with us some of the World Bank results. This was a study conducted last year, and this will be a reference so we can see the numbers, how we were doing, and how we will do from now on. Lucia, you have the floor.
Bueno, mientras resolvemos, tenemos un temita con la presentación.
We have just a technical issue with the presentation, but we're going to move forward maybe with some of the questions, and then we can continue with the presentation. As I said earlier on, there are big opportunities ahead of us, and it is also important to take the experience of other countries in the region who have been working in these topics. They have a lot of experience, and we really need to take into account the fact that we cannot import these models, like import European models or models that come from developed countries, but we need to take them as a reference and of course adapt them to our realities. For this, it is important to articulate international operation, get to know and learn about the best practices available, and see how each country will be able to incorporate this into their own realities. So if you like, we can start now. So let's continue. We will continue now with the presentation. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Lade, for the invitation and for continuing adding on topics of energy efficiency. It is a true pleasure to meet you, to get together again with acquaintances and old friends and new people as well in the industry, and it is very interesting to see that this is still relevant. So just to set the foundations of our discussion, I'm going to be sharing some of the numbers that some colleagues gather throughout an assessment, and we will talk about the state of the art of these topics in Latin America. So this is going to be the kickoff for our topic, and the idea is that, of course, everyone present here will be able to share their own experiences and their concrete cases. So this is the overview, what happened with intensity, the policies and the programs in the region. We will also see how we can break this down. This study, which was conducted from the World Bank, was finalized last year. We gathered data up until 2019 because, of course, 2020 was a very particular year for the whole world. So it wasn't a very relevant year to incorporate data. 2021 was a year that was not complete, actually. So what we're showing here is an evolution of the year from 2000 to 2009. These are data that we understand that will be published either today or tomorrow, and this information, of course, will continue to evolve, but this is just to have a good idea of the trend over the last 20 years and which has been the behavior of Latin America compared to other economies. Of course, we have started out from a lower intensity, and this is where the thing started to low down, and now we have this sort of flat line. And after the pandemic, we will see how we resume these topics. Beyond this flattening or this plateau, we can see how this has impacted the intensity and the product. These are the typical graphs that everyone working in the industry have to put up. But this is something applicable for the whole region. What is going on at a country level? What we said yesterday and in previous events, Latin America is a region that is very diverse, complex. It is difficult to work with. It is difficult actually to find policies and be able to compare situations. But there is a reference on what happened at the regional level. That is the line shown in green. And then we have particular situations for different countries. Some which have had a better performance over the last years for energy efficiencies, and others who didn't have such performance. These are the trends that we can see in different countries, but now we're looking at a sector level graph we are differentiating here the residential, the manufacturing, and the service sectors. And you can also see throughout this 20 years period that the behavior of each one of the sectors has a lot of variations, not only for the region, but also within each country. We have these very different variations among the three sectors. Regarding policies, this is something that is not always easy to be able to analyze in this way and compare the different tools and how we can input all instruments into the different years and the different yields. We know that all risk associated to comparing countries and diverse situations is a difficult exercise to conduct, but the idea is to see what's the general overview for the region. As you can see on this slide, the largest amount of policies applied to the countries in the region are concentrated in the residential sector, services, and the last one corresponds to the industrial. And in the middle we have policies that are transversal to the different sectors. In the graph of the countries, you will be able to see the amount of policies being applied. And here it is also very important to understand how we measure these topics. Some of the policies are particular ones or programs, or are associated to a specific program like a source of funding, and other policies last over time, like standards, for example. Once a country starts in applying energy efficiency standards, that tends to last over time. But here you can see the variety of situations in the different countries and which was the sector which received most attention, which was the residential one from all the countries in the region.
Another important topic is to see that since 2006-2007 we see the intensity in the... So there were more countries implementing different measures. If one sees the colors, you can see that there's no consistency, and this might be associated to the nature of a punctual policy, and then it is expected that the actors continue adopting that measure, or either because there are financial issues that support this erratic situation. And here you can see what I was mentioning regarding labeling. This should be maintained in time and last beyond situations. Here we can show something that is important to realize the complexity of efficiency. What are we measuring here? On the one hand, we are measuring what happened to intensity, and on the other hand, we are measuring the institutionality of energy efficiency. And what are we seeing here? We are comparing two periods, the year 2000 and the year 2019, and we see that not in every case the improvement in institutionality showed an efficiency improvement. So, is this enough? Is this what we have to do as an institution, or we have to do more things? Because in some countries we see there's a better institutionality and a better efficiency, but not in every country. So it's important to realize that institutionality and efficiency add up, but efficiency needs a lot of interventions and tools, and institutionality is one of those, but probably is not the only one. I hope panelists will speak about their experience from the management point of view, so to see at to what extent institutionality was enough, or if there are other things needed. Here you see the paper. You have the paper available. You can see it, but this here we wanted to do some econometric exercises to separate in these 20 years what happened with the energy intensity in the region, and what could be explained by efficiency, and what could be explained by a change in the activity, so that we understand, because as Medardo was saying at the beginning, we are seeing the results of efficiency, and we are not seeing very positive results in the region, so we need to understand where the issue is, what's happening, and how much of that reduction is due to efficiency issues and how much has to do with the economies of the region, with the activities, what we were mentioning yesterday. The colleague from INGLES was speaking about the growth in the region with a very limited growth and how this is impacting on the energy sector. Here, as you can see, in the case of different countries, the intensity and the efficiency sometimes compensates the activity, but in the case of Latin America, there's a small change which is explained due to efficiency. And within this context, and sharing the information that we could process in this period, we hope, and we will have the report that will be published today and some other data, and I know many of you are working on this topic, so now I'll give the floor to Andrea so that among all of us we can answer this question. As Dardo said, has come with us for a while already. So we are all people and we have the same problems as always, problems with PowerPoints, and efficiency is not the topic that people want to manage. So it's a pleasure being here, and we'll show our experiences to see what we can do in this sense.
Gracias, Lucía, por la presentación y bueno, por dejarnos.
Thank you for your presentation and for these figures so that we can continue thinking and discussing to continue with this. So, to start our conversation, I'm going to start by the good students of the region. Uruguay has been working for a long time in this, so Fitzgerald, I would like you to tell us, based on the Uruguayan experience, which do you consider are the key elements to have energy efficiency installed, and how do you have a long-term continuity, because we see lots of fluctuations in the region. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel and being with these colleagues, exchanging ideas about this very important issue. So, first of all, is regarding the necessary condition Lucia was mentioning, which is not enough, and which has to do with having a regulation, a law, standard that provides a framework for the policy, and that's fundamental. So, when you have an act, a law, this means it has gone through Congress, it has been discussed at the political level, and if that is also voted by all the political leaders, well, you have a political support which is positioning energy efficiency in the public agenda, and this will have an impact in the state. In that sense, that's the kickoff. So let's have the theoretical framework, let's have the legal framework to put this in the ground, and with that we can set the guidelines for the policies. That law has its governance, as Lucia showed. This is not something that has determined the result, but it's important that the governance is determined. It's important to set how this policy will be financed. So here we're going to have this policy and this governance, and this will be placed here in the country, and this will have the financial assets that will allow the development of these policies. And it's also important that this legal framework establishes certain policies. Laws have more general aspects, and regulations are always set on the implementation agency. But the important thing is that in that political discussion, in that law, some action framework is established. This facilitates the action, and this facilitates having a long-term continuity. However, this can always change when there's a new government, and this might happen. Within this, and I repeat, and I coincide with what Lucia was saying, we are in the first stage. We have to do other things to allow for this long-term view. And one of it, I think the most important one, is to create awareness, to be able, from these implementing agencies, to create this awareness in the society about the advantages of energy efficiency, to create in education, in formal education of adolescents and young children, the concept of energy efficiency and all the things that could be done using energy efficiency. In that way, we are ensuring the maintenance of this, and especially the development of that concept we need, because energy efficiency is one resource, one extra resource, but we don't see it, because if you need to see a dam, you go and see a dam, and or if we go to a wind farm and you see the generations, or you go to a sun farm and a solar farm and you see it. But in energy efficiency you can't see it, it's not tangible, so we have to build it through policies, awareness policies, and especially with policies that go to the territory. So policies that can be used by the population. And here it's very important to have this bridge to the tangible asset, because in that way the population, the industry, the commerces, schools, families start seeing the advantages of this efficiency. There's something I always say, which is the path to efficiency is a non-return positive path. So when you speak about a non-return path, you think of a negative thing, but an energy efficient measure is a positive thing, and you always make people think of energy efficiency as something positive. So in the way of the policies, well, we have to create the policies for big corporations, big companies that have their technical teams, their awareness. So in order to measure the policy afterwards and to have an impact in big companies, it's easier if you have that thought when you prepare the law. But the difficult thing is to create a tangible thing from this, and to have energy efficiency in all the society, regardless of where the person is. That's more difficult to design, it's more difficult to measure, and probably the impacts are not as big, but in the accumulation they have a big weight. So we are carrying out a series of policies that, as Andrea was saying, there are lots of programs that started many years ago and which have maintained throughout the different administrations, and we created this with a people-centered, and we have to reach all the sectors and all the people in the country. Among efficiency programs and others, we have 34 plans. So we have, with that, we try to reach everyone, no matter where the person is. I have no matter if I want to be efficient at home or in my industry or in my restaurant. Well, these people have the tools from the technical point of view, from the financial point of view, with the possibility of creating this awareness and having this measure. Probably then in other interventions I'll speak about some examples on how to preserve this, to make the people learn and understand, so that this can be something continuous in time. And now I'm going to Ignacio. I'm going to ask you about the case of Chile, where you took a lot of time to have your law, but you made lots of progress.
What do you think were the successful factors or the tools that you had in order to move forward in comparison with the application of the law, and which do you consider are the elements that we need to continue working with in the future? Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Elade, for inviting me to this event. Thank you, Lucia, for your excellent presentation. It was very interesting to learn also what was discussed yesterday in the previous event. I will start first with a concept, because I agree with the fact that in order to make progress with energy efficiency in the countries, we need to have incentives and proper legislation. Why? Because this is an imperfect market. Otherwise, we wouldn't be asking ourselves in the first place, why do we need energy efficiency and how do we need to improve? The fact is that we have obstacles that are financial, technical, that come from lack of knowledge. We need to better prepare people. So this has to do a lot with investment, the operational aspect of equipment. So many times what happens is that at a residential level, the one constructing the building is not the one that is going to live there, and he or she won't be paying the utility invoices. So they don't take care about reducing the consumption. There are no incentives among companies in order to work and create with energy efficiency. In the past, manager for energy wouldn't have any KPI for energy efficiency. So if no one is taking care of this, why would a company take care of energy efficiency? Everything is paid out in 3, 4, 5 years. So this is a huge opportunity for a company to reduce their consumption. But what happens is that we have a rotation, we have high rotation within management. So when you try to maximize your yield throughout a year or for the next 2 years, you're not going to be investing in more efficient technology, which is more expensive, but will generate better results in the medium and long term. We need to correct that. How can we do that? Through regulations. Having said that, we need to think of how energy is consumed in the different countries. I will be talking about Chile, but I think it's similar everywhere. In Chile, a third of consumption is represented by transportation. Another third is big companies. We have 300 companies consuming about 35% of the total energy consumption, out of which then we have 31% that corresponds to the residential sector, hospitals, and other companies that are not the biggest ones. So the public policy is focusing on this third, companies and small companies and residential sectors. So the impact in terms of energy efficiency is very low because we're only addressing 1/3 of the consumption. So if we want to be efficient as a country, we have to allocate these efforts to the biggest portion of the market. This is still under a process of implementation. The law has already been passed. However, results will be seen from 2025 onwards, because companies are being told these are the parametrics, these are the results that we are expecting from you to generate, and these are going to be the savings for you in the first couple of years. Maybe I'm between 10 or 15% of energy consumption reduction. And in the transportation sector, this is key. For the rest of sectors, I think, and the countries, I think that the most important aspects is to have a minimum mandatory labeling system for energy efficiency. As we know, the energy efficiency labeling has been able to reduce about 15% of the consumption in many countries, and it also led to the improvement in quality of many products. Why? Because when we started working with refrigerators in Chile, most of the manufacturers would fall in category E, and then others would be B, C, some in A, and I'm talking about 15 years ago. So all these guys were to the ministry, they knock on the doors and say, why? They were claiming why, okay? What did they do? They replaced the rubber isolating the doors. We call it rubber in Chile, okay? But they changed actually this rubber for the doors, so that enabled them to move from E category to C or B. So it was over $100 in savings just replacing that piece. So this is just an example how this weather strip replacement actually improved the consumption. Another thing that we did is when we were changing the washing machines labels, the more efficient ones were still rendering clothes that were not very clean. Why? Because manufacturers were over-declaring the capacity, the loading capacity of the machine, but the efficiency is kilograms of cloth per amount of energy. So now all manufacturers needed to change their information in order to provide good information, because at the end of the day what we want to know as users, end users, is to know how many kilograms of clothes will be actually clean, really clean. So that really helped us to make a lot of progress in energy efficiency. Thank you so much. And talking about washing machines, I think that one of the roles of the state has to do with intervening, so whatever is done in a correct way. So you avoid these poor experiences, because you may think that maybe the manufacturer was forging the information in the label, but the role of the state really is to moderate this, so the end user and the consumer doesn't have a wrong perception on the manufacturer. And this also applies to all programs for energy efficiency. Part of these programs, many of the things that we have been seeing in the region have to do with the cooperation programs. Florencia, I would like in this sense to ask you, what are the experiences, or what experiences do you think that have been successful in Argentina, specifically those who have to do with the cooperation of other countries and with gathering the lessons learned from other countries that have done this before us, and how to adapt them to the context of your country? Thank you. First of all, thank you, Olade, for the invitation. Good morning, everybody. I would like to also thank the Uruguayan government for hosting this week, this Energy Week, and for their warm welcome. Thank you, Lucia, for your intervention, and Andrea for the professionalism that you apply to everything that you do. So talking about the role in Argentina, we have had the opportunity of cooperating with the region throughout different programs. We are currently conducting a program that is a mirror program with the Chilean government, and we are working with the Euroclimate Cooperation. We have seven questions that are destined to providing training, implementing diagnosis, generating guidelines on management, which enable us to work in a simultaneous way in topics that have to do with our region, similarities that we have in the region. So I think that is important to highlight when it comes to regional cooperations, is that even though we are similar, when you apply something to another country, we see the diversity. This is a smaller country. In Argentina, we have a federal character, and this, of course, has its own features when you need to apply something from the national government to the municipal government or the federal government, depending on the topic, of course. So I think that energy efficiency is popular discourse, a popular narrative, or it can be trendy. But then when you want to apply this to public policies, you can see that in the past years, energy efficiency was the core of any event, any energy event. But now we can see that green hydrogen or e-mobility is on fashion or more popular in our meetings. But a central topic when you think about public policies, when you think the logic behind an industry, and when you actually think and analyze the management of energy, we're talking about rational use and efficient use of energy in the consumption, in the generation, in demand. Efficiency has a broad aspect, and it's applicable to many of these aspects. So I think that it is key to have a cooperation where, thanks to the European Union, we are generating these workshops of co-generation as an ally to energy efficiency, as a purpose for the industry to regulate and think of. So I think within the programs, and for us who are part of the government in Argentina, we were able to improve the PTVD in our country. We have a previous meeting. We were able to come and visit your country some months ago, and we were already starting to think about the different policies of the different countries, how to develop them, and how to strengthen our public policies. In our case, from the Energy Secretariat and through the initiative of Flavia Rochon's initiative, we have a law that is applicable to energy efficiency. This is a huge challenge for our country because this implies touching some of the municipality jurisdictions or federal jurisdictions. And right now we don't have an agenda for this, for the Congress to discuss a topic that for us from the Secretariat is so fundamental. We understand that settling the foundation, the regulatory foundation for energy efficiency, and walk hand in hand with incentives are the kickoff for the development of any energy efficiency strategy that we want to apply. So Argentina has an opportunity in the sense of applying this because of the diversity of our scenarios and our own features. We have a lot of potential to growth. So when it comes to talking about efficiency, I think that we need to be very broad. And in order to give you an example of this diversity, we have created a national labeling system. We will be able to make progress and provide more training for the different professionals in order to label these households. We're working on a promotion campaign on labeling, and we are talking about the advantages of labeling. The idea is to raise awareness in the society. We have actually put together a forum for this labeling system. We have invited the academia, we have invited the private sector, for construction companies, also for the real estate chamber. So we have all got together and we have discussed the advantages. We have, of course, invited the public sector, but we need to start home, discussing the importance of our roles. And I'm sure my colleagues in the panel, energy efficiency ends up being a will of those users or officials, because sometimes you need to really find ways about this and see how you can bring more value to this kind of policies. So I think that among corporations, as Andrea said, working with the region, getting to know what are the programs being conducted, what are the milestones that were successful, and how we can all reach a certain level together, it would enable Argentina to learn from the solutions of other countries and to put them into the agenda, topics that we didn't have in the agenda. So the previous time that I was visiting Uruguay, I was visiting UTE, and I saw that you were able to invest in intelligent meters. And from the Energy Secretariat, we had the chance to have this in a forum for metering. And we understood that we need to measure things in a better way, and we need to be able to process this data. So from the input and the resource that data brings, we need to be able to implement and develop better solutions that work hand in hand with energy efficiency.
Thank you.
Ahora sí. Bueno, gracias Florencia.
Thank you, Florencia. And after listening to you, I see another characteristic of energy efficiency, which might be a barrier, which is the transversality, because we can't forget that it crosses all the sectors and different government functions. When we speak about regulations, sometimes efficiency is in the Ministry of Energy, but it has to be articulated with industry, with housing, with education, because you mentioned education, and we can't forget municipal governments as well. So this is quite important to have the different sectors, public, private sectors, and their articulation, and this adds complexity. We were speaking about regulation, you spoke about training, international cooperation, but we still need something else which has to do with financing, and it was mentioned. We know that in the countries in the region, public financing is usually scarce for everything, and energy efficiency is not in the top 5 of public asset allocation. So here we need the international cooperation, multilateral organizations, and that's also limited because they also cater for other sectors. So I'm going to ask you, what financing tools, conventional, but what could be directed to energy efficiency, or non-conventional, or not exclusively depending on public funds, well, thank you. So again, financing has been discussed for a while already, and I think there are different options, different tools that are very specific. Not only specific countries, but circumstances that are specific. And so it's very difficult to say, well, let's make a fund, because there are lots of complexities. But I would bring this question: financing with what and how is it sustainable? So we have 34 plans. We have to create awareness. So we need financing to what? To create awareness, and so then things flow on their own, or we need financing so that these 34 plans create loans for the industrial sector, or as Ignacio was saying, you are attacking the 300 companies in Chile that use 30% of the energy. Do we need financing for those companies? So financing is quite complex, and we can all share experiences. Multilateral organizations have efficiency in their agenda, but we don't have lots of resources, we don't have a set of tools, and we always see these issues of the variability of sustainability. So as we think that our contribution is just something small, well, we have to make sure that this will continue, and for that we need the laws of or the instruments to allow these resources to be created. Some countries might have a demand fund, a revolving fund, but it's important that we know what we are wanting to finance and what the order is. So we've all seen efficiency funds that have no demand. So the order of the factors do important. And we have to start thinking again how the factors are, and where we can make the biggest impact. You also mentioned labeling, creating the basic standards, well, financing for that, the cooperation to help the countries to see that, the banks or the more specific AGAZ, the European Commission work on those. So for those things, financing is easier, but not its implementation, which is very complex and creates the need of sitting and talking with a lot of parties. And then we speak about the parties. So we have the private sector, not from the point of view of the demand, but from the point of view of offering efficient assets. So their participation is varied, so as to say. Yesterday I met someone who was working on cables, and he told me that they were working on a new plant near Asunción, and their efficiency of 30% was a 30% less reduction of leaks. And so we have to have this sector in the financing, in the financial aspect also. So the industry creates supplies that should be efficient and that should be sustainable, and those implies decisions that should be made at a certain time, at a certain point, because after the cables are set, no country will change all their cables, or no company will change the machinery because there's a new one with a bigger efficiency. So there's a moment to make those decisions, and decisions should be made at the adequate moment. So I'm not saying that I cannot finance whatever is needed for efficiency, which is true, but I'm saying that there are lots of things, knowing what for, and think of specific solutions for each country and for each reality. Efficiency certificates is also important. In many countries it's been already worked on. Uruguay has something in their law regarding certificates, and that's an option for financing, but there we still need to know how the world is doing with this, because we cannot have overlapping with the efficiency certificate, renewable certificate. So these are issues that are very specific for each country. Hello, thank you. I'm very happy being here. We are aligned in lots of things. I thank Olade for this invitation. This is very, very enriching for all of us. Regarding financing, I want to make a point on the fact that I represent a union which is ENERSCO, the Energy Services Companies, and these companies will provide solutions to the demand, to the energy consumers, regardless of this. In Chile, we have 20% of electrical consumption and 80% of thermal energy. So during many years, our partners worked with the thermal users and provided solutions. And I don't know if everyone knows, but I'm going to tell you what is our model, our service, Energy Services Company. These companies try to offer a solution with an implementation with this energy user, and this implementation has to be paid with what is saved. So this should happen, but not always happens. And this has to do with the integration of lots of solutions with technologies, and this is a high price project. And sometimes we saw that it was a long-term payable project. So what does this mean? There are companies that can do it. They have the technical capacity, they have the money, or they have a third party that finances the project, and this is paid through the savings. So it's a win-win formula, but which has to effectively involve the implementer and the technically powerful, which has to provide a saving which has to be useful for the payment. And it's a great solution not only for an industry which is focused in their production, but it's also an alternative for the public sector. One doesn't have to be an expert in energy, and this transparently allows, and based on different types of contracts, to implement successful projects and that are paid by the savings. Having said this, in order to come as a massive, the public policies at the state level has to be a state policy, so it has to be maintained in time, and this demands the institutionality to be there. So energy efficiency can't be inconstant, and today in Chile we have high expenditures of energy. We try to be productive, but some companies have 15% of their budget in energy, and others spend 40 or 50%. Nowadays, as the price is higher, it's they are trying to keep to be more cautious. So when we have these companies involved with their own models, well, these companies are financing this per se. So they have to see these signs so that they continue investing in these solutions. This is the ESCO financing, and I do believe that there lacks that the banking sector understands this kind of investment. This kind of investment do exist, and this empowers self-generation projects of distributed energy. There are many projects that nowadays will receive the well, sometimes they ask, well, I want to have solar panels, but there's a prior thing, because sometimes these companies think this is attractive, this is interesting, and they take a picture, but energy efficiency empowers that this project of solar panels is paid, the payback is reduced to half the time. And that's the experience we're having in Chile with this project. We, in fact, so it's not an isolated solution. We can have integrated solutions. This allows to be done through the ESCO model, and the payback time is shorter. So we are speaking of 8 or 10 years projects that are repaid in 4 or 5. So we need the institutions of the state that they help us. We need to be backed by them, because the model is allowing to self-finance it, and the experts are already there. So that's the kind of financing that from the private sector we are offering, and this has been tested by the state in public buildings, hospitals, high complexity hospitals, and also in the private sector with selling energy models or contracts for guaranteed savings, which is a formula that has proved successful in Chile as well. Thank you.
Mónica, gracias, Lucía.
Thank you, Monica and Lucia. Fitzgerald, you commented earlier on that you have over 34 programs currently being conducted. We won't have time, of course, to discuss them all, but if you can comment on maybe the 2 or 3 that you consider which have more success or more impact. So let's say if I had to choose among 2, 3, which ones would you recommend, or which ones do address the higher portion of demand? Thank you. The thing is that we approach these thinking about all the sectors, thinking about how we can bring energy efficiency. So if I maybe select only 3, I would be excluding other projects that are also important, to be honest. But I would have to mention programs that have to do with education, some programs that we were developing and carrying out. We have been able to strengthen them, and this is very important because maybe from the savings standpoint, they are not as robust, because when you have children in maybe at primary school or junior high school, when they are running projects about energy efficiency, maybe at the end this is not something that has a lot of weight, but when several young adults take these as very important topics and they reach out to the community as a very important topic, then now we're talking about a very important thing when it comes to cultural awareness, changing your habits, a change in the mindset. So this is very important. Just to name a few, we have conducted some programs that have to do with the participation of people, searching for this incorporation of energy efficiency. There was a panel of local governments that took place yesterday. I wasn't able to attend, but we actually participated in a program with efficient localities, and we have several programs within this program where we call the municipalities, the local governments, in order to involve them, because they are the ones who have actually something to say in their own territories, like mayors and other officials. So we invited them to participate in these energy efficiency programs. They also were invited to present them. We would join them, we would give them money in order to apply this project, but we also ask them for a counterpart from the private sector or contribution outside of a program. So many times the local government, or maybe an NGO or any other force that would be alive, let's say, in that locality would bring something to the project, either with workforce, working hours, etc. So within that program, we had one which was efficient and social localities, where these localities who were working with disabled people, with the elderly, and also with the young population, they were participating in energy efficiency activities. Also, there were also programs for environmental agencies or organizations that were promoting energy efficiency. Another leg would be the touristic part. Localities in our country, I hope that you may stay in our country and enjoy what we offer throughout the territory. So we call these local governments and departmental governments to present proposals for energy efficiency in touristic areas. And there are very different examples that range from an isolated light where we didn't have a lighting system that would improve the conditions of that resort, so people and families would enjoy that during summer season, or other projects that had to do with stations, where with a photovoltaic panel you're able to load the battery of your cell phone or your tablet, or maybe you can use it for heating water. As you know, we drink a lot of mate in this region. So these are recreational things that also bring value to the community, and they have a place to rest and to enjoy family time, but they are also in touch with energy efficiency. In some places, this was actually built by students of technical schools. So here is where we connect these junior high school formation or training with guys who start working with this. We have also worked with other technical universities in the implementation of new careers that focus on energy efficiency, helping the community to carry out these kinds of projects. We have also had other projects that were maybe a bit more complex that were proposed by the community itself. Yesterday, Villasara's mayor, this is a locality at 33, which has almost 2,000 inhabitants, and with this program, those who were here yesterday, you will listen to this again, sorry, but they bought a tricycle that was electrical, and they asked for the neighbors to recycle their waste. They would collect the waste using this vehicle, and they would separate the organic and the non-organic waste. They bought a biodigester, and with that biodigester, they generated natural gas to cook food at a local kindergarten, a CAIF. So they were generating from biomass energy, and then they also implemented other projects in order to load e-cars. They put it actually, the loading station was at the sidewalk. And they also were involved in the production of a biofertilizer. So people who would sell their own production for fruits or vegetables, they were able to apply this fertilizer in the open air trade market as well. So, of course, this was accompanied by training, funding, and technical knowledge. So we have some of the examples that I can bring in order to reach different areas. We have also a program for SMEs, or those companies who are able to prove that are over 90% of energy efficiency. In year one, we're always talking about small, medium companies. So these companies that are able to prove that they are implementing energy efficiency measures, they receive an incentive. We actually certificate them on energy efficiency, and these companies or persons receive a subsidy in order to promote this. And in e-mobility, we have conducted several programs in this sense. We have also worked with the residential sector. There is one that's very, very new. I think that I signed it last week. We are installing an energy efficiency table for construction within an environment in which from the ministry, we are able to establish a dialogue with the academia, with the construction, with the chambers of construction, and with the different actors that are participating in this industry, so we can accompany them in the introduction of energy efficiency. This is very important, as Florencia said, in the construction of the residential areas. We have also conducted programs to incentivize the efficiency labeling. So we also try to promote this so people would buy these kinds of products with the energy efficiency label. And we said, okay, we're going to give an award or a prize to 3,000 people who would be buying Class A equipment, could be air conditioning or any other equipment. And it was about $75 that bonus that they would get out of that purchase. So we said, okay, this is going to be available for up to 3,000 people. We didn't promote that campaign. It wasn't in the press. There was no advertisement for that. It was very, very small and humble. We just expressed that in a conference. And very quickly, people started to send their requests. And we reached a point in which in a few days, we had to increase the amount of bonuses that we were going to give out. It was about 21 million Uruguayan pesos. And we were able to have, actually, this was up to 7,000 households were introducing this new equipment. And then this was translated in terms of saving. And this is the saving of 257 households. You can say, oh, this is too little, but from the standpoint of these families, we have 7,000 families who are saving money. And there was a click in their mindset. They said, okay, if we did okay with this, what other energy efficiency measures we can take? Maybe I can replace my windows, I can replace other home appliances. And this is a way for them to see the benefit. We have other examples, of course. And once I stop talking, I'm sure more examples will come to my mind. Thank you, Florencia. You were talking about your experience with the label for energy efficiency and the difficulty that it posed in its application for household or the residential sector. What are the other programs that you were working with or other initiatives that you can share with us that have proven good results, or maybe that you said we have to continue working in this way? Within what we administer in our energy secretariat this year, finally we were able to finalize a very long process of work. This was conducted by Cecilia Garibote along with the cooperation of the IDB, so thank you IDB, where we were able to establish the foundation of our energy transition program, prioritizing some programs that were already being developed. Within our secretariat, we assessed for each sector to have a program in order to incentivize this energy efficiency agenda. And within the industrial sector or production sector, I think that this was one of the best measures. And this has to do with the implementation of learning networks, where we have over 90 companies participating. We closed the network for Mar del Plata 2 weeks ago, and it has already started. It will be finishing in March next year. This methodology enabled us to bring to the table different companies on an average of 13, 15, in order to promote the exchange of the policies that they are developing for energy efficiency, how to conduct diagnosis, and to understand how this energy efficiency implementation works. Whenever I had a chance to participate in the launching sessions of these learning networks,
Imponer paneles.
everyone said, I want to implement panels, I want to have solar energy, because what I really want to have is the marketing part, right? So the challenge for this sector is to understand that there are many roles and many advantages that the energy efficiency has previous to installing your panel. So it has proven to be a benefit to work with the industry. And what we're searching for is to have more companies certifying the ISO standard 5001. We also work with the Clean Energy Program for ministries for energy efficiency. We would like to have further companies joining this program. This must be included in the agenda of the business companies, that they do face a lot of challenges and problems, but maybe energy efficiency is not the first priority for them. So this would open up the doors to a sector in which, even though we're working with the sector, we see that investment projects really speak about the efficiency in construction, but labeling was also useful as a kick-off in order to work with the municipalities. We're working with the Net Zero project as well with the Pampa province to implement their verification codes, because they are the ones who have the jurisdiction on their territories. So it's good to see that the public sector also wants to implement new ideas and new things, and also to do this in a way that the private sector would like to invest. There is another program that has been running for a couple of years now, and we want to adhere the public buildings to this program. And now we are in a stage in which we are establishing the latest stages of a program. I continue to repeat, but this has done through cooperation and we have been able to implement energy efficiency plans for the construction of public buildings. So we will do this through the installation of monitoring system for 15 buildings, and I will be able to share more success stories next time we get together, and I will be able to tell you how we're able to reflect these, so each utility manager really is bringing these new ideas.
I truly believe that within the biggest works we've been doing in efficiency is the awareness creation. So let's articulate with the governments, with education to communicate the advantages of energy efficiency. So that was like an overall review of what we are doing in Argentina. And the good thing is that from this type of panels, we see that energy efficiency is still on the agenda. We are committed to it, and we see roles such as entities as the World Bank, who is here on behalf of Lucia, and faced clearly on efficiency, energy efficiency, and vulnerable housing, centered in vulnerable clubs and community centers, which will have a new awareness click in the handling of energy, and we'll try and continue replicating. I'll continue speaking about energy efficiency, although we have green hydrogens that is speaking louder now these days. So we have to look for the channels of the use of efficient energy use, which are good for the demand. Thank you, Florencia. Many of those who are working in energy efficiency say we are like preachers trying to convince the rest that this is the way to follow. Ignacio, I wanted to ask you, based on your past in the ministry and in the agency, so you were speaking about the good things, but what were the challenges you faced, and which things, if you were to start again, you would do in a different way based on those challenges you faced? And I am asking you because I know that you are always open to share the things that did work and those who didn't work well, and those contribute a lot. Well, there are lots of things. Energy efficiency is a trial and error. So one of the biggest difficulties is the idea of visualization, being visible. So we saw renewable energy with plenty of investments of thousands of millions of dollars, and all the country aligned to receive those investments. Today, we have lots of promises of investments for green hydrogen. And again, the countries are aligned to receive those investments. So when we speak about energy efficiency, a study of some years ago, we spoke about a $300 million for an ESCO market. And so we saw that in 10 more years we are going to save 3,000 million pesos, well, $3 million annually, but in hundreds of companies. So there's an invisibility issue there. So how to install this has a structural difficulty. And things we didn't do well in Chile. I think the first thing is the energy audits. We did lots of energy audits to lots of companies, and they were terrible. So they took this audit, and they just we did like 500 audits, and less than 1% they had something that happened then. So because first of all, in the company there were not indicators in the company, so they were these audits were received in kilowatt per hour, in joules, so for expert engineers, but the people, the management did not understand, so it was a disaster. But we were not only wrong in Chile, but people in Europe, since 2012 they had a regulation. They have companies that companies can implement ISO 50001, or they can have an energy audit. And I've heard, and someone could correct me, that in Europe there's a market of audits, energy audits, that that for $2,000 they have the check of having this energy audit, and and a real audit could cost $50,000. So this is why energy management systems are so important for the companies, because this creates the cultural change inside the companies to take place. So we have to implement the policies. And another thing that didn't work is what you have in Brazil, what you have in Uruguay and in the US, a charge in the energy bill that has to do with the lack of energy, with the lack of efficiency. For example, electromobility. Nowadays, it's energy efficiency for buses and for taxis, but not for cars that will run 20,000 kilometers a year, because it does not pay for itself. But this is opening doors and showing new markets, and this is what we haven't achieved yet in Chile. Monica, I'll ask you, regarding the market, you spoke about the ESCOM model, which is one element of an energy efficiency market, thinking of a country with a policy which is already consolidated. But which other conditions are necessary to say that we have an energy efficiency market which is robust and mature? Well, we need to have a balance between what we are speaking, because today we are more or less aligned in the fact that we need an institutionality and a framework, a legal framework that guides us to implementations. And on the other hand, we'll still need all the users of the energy that have to pay the bills. So we have the important role of the state with users, but going back to, but who provides the service to this user? And here I think it's very relevant that on the one hand the public policy has to be neutral and has to be kept in time, and it has to achieve coordinating the different ministries, because having not aligned ministries is very bad. So there has to be a good communication and coordination. It has to be neutral regarding technology, because as Florencia was saying, nowadays we have the trend of green hydrogen, and then everyone goes to that side, and we forget about the solution that is user-centered. We can't kill the industry, which can't stop, and it's already using a certain kind of energy. So after we have all this promotion of integration of solutions that has to be maintained in time, well, there has to be a union or a specialized companies with an ethics code, and we see that as a union. So we are in charge of not having trained companies aligned to the law, certified for their management system, their verification, assessment, etc., but also having an ethics code. And this same union of energy efficiency, or of ESCO in general, allows a self-regulation, because peers are seeing how you do it, and that's very powerful. it's very powerful to have an entity where you have validated experts, where there are examples to follow, and we can really take care of the user. And the third side is financing. Who understands energy efficiency and how it is done and how it is implemented? Well, you need the banking partner that is not understanding. We cannot have a traditional credit for implementers. Implementers cannot continue putting their hands, can you continue paying their houses, paying their investments with their houses. So we have to create a specialized fund or something that allow implementers to have 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 projects at a year. So we need a more flexible system, because this is a self-paid system and it speaks about a complete win-win efficiency system, but we need a fund to empower these implementers, and this will become massive in Chile, Uruguay, Argentina. But there has to be a balance between this public thing, this critical mass, which is grouped at least in Chile in UNESCO, but we still need the private financial sector that provides some fresh air so that these implementers can massively implement their solutions. Thank you. And the challenge there is including the banking sector when we speak about capacity building, because when we speak about awareness or training, we speak about final users, and it's key that we have this training and awareness so that they understand what we are speaking about, that energy efficiency are not solar panels, and that this cannot be mortgaged as a car or as a building, but that they need financing because they have a way of self-paying this. So I haven't heard from any country to create education for the banking sector, because clearly we need funds from them. And well, Lucia, you started sharing the status of Latin America. We heard about several experiences, but you are also experienced in working with lots of countries in the region. So in summary, which are the main barriers or difficulties which should be removed in the next 5 years so that we can evolve towards energy efficiency on the long term? Well, difficulties, there are lots. I don't know if they will be removed. We've lived with them for 20 years already. So, and there's a problem with the preachers also, and I am included. On the one hand, we speak about atomized interventions. We have capillarity, the 34 programs of Fitera was saying, but I'm attacking the municipal services, schools. So lots of parties that should be involved in this. We have individual interventions with small impacts, and I don't think we will be removing this in 5 years, because this is the nature of energy. We all use energy in our activities. So if creating efficiency goes on that side, it goes on the life of everyone. So, and there has been a lot of assessment, as Ignacio was speaking about Europe, the issue of 2 times or 3 times rates. UTE is an example in that sense. In other countries there are these traders that offer different packages that are tailor-made for consumers. Now, the user is tired of thinking so much if it's the time of washing the dishes or doing the dishes now or taking a bath now. So the people are already so this has to do with where the people are focusing. So removing barriers is not as easy. Another thing is the specific issue, and perhaps we cannot remove the barriers but do some different things. We usually don't show figures, and I am laughing because I see a colleague here that these people are not showing figures, but we know that everything is very specific. So one could say, yes, if I change an air conditioning and if I now use an inverter, I save this. Well, I'm not in their houses to see how they use energy. So sharing an example and allowing this example to be replicated is very difficult, and also for the industry. Then in the industry you have machineries with certain characteristics, so the manufacturer knows what the consumption is, but there's a trend of not showing these figures. But as Ignacio was saying, the impact is small, but it adds to the whole. So how to tackle barriers? Well, to have a task for all our preachers. So I think we are all preachers here, so we have to rethink how we pack this in a different way. So are we speaking about transition? What is the name we will put to efficiency, and how are we doing our math? Because we know about these difficulties will continue to be there, but we already know that if we put all this together, there's a lot. From the weather and from the inventor to work, we have to stop using the non-efficient one that I removed, because if I continue using the old one, I didn't solve the problem. So for those who are already preachers, let's pack efficiency in another way. Let's try and show some figures without simplifying, because sometimes the figure simplifies a lot, and because it might. So it depends on the people. It depends on how many people lives on one household. So in the pandemics, we saw an increase of the residential consumption in all the region, for example. So these basic difficulties, we won't be able to remove them, because all activities use energy. But perhaps our task is, let's try to make a turn. Let's see how we can pack this. Let's see if we can show some figures without making people think that you could replicate this and you can have the same saves and the same repayments and the same consumption.
Gracias.
Thank you. Yes, I think that your answer is.
Lucía, y el desafío.
Whenever we talk about energy efficiency, the question remains how we start fighting, right? How can we bridge these gaps? Because the solutions at the end of the day should be quite similar depending on our differences. We are on time, but I would like to ask you whether if you could briefly, in maybe 30 seconds, give you an opinion on which action do you think, very concrete action, would you recommend for the next years in order to foster cooperation in the region, so we can all incorporate these topics into our agenda? How can we promote this in the region? Since you were mentioning about creating a package, this is something that was good in Chile. Our partners have tried to integrate themselves into the solutions. So we actually have experts taking part in audits. They integrate technology and different capabilities, and this was integrated because after one of the reports that we received from the IEA, they were talking about a lot about retrofit, how we should update a building for residential or industrial use. So we really had to reiterate these messages so we could have a better response and we would be able to promote this to be done under ESCO's model. I think that this is a very fruitful solution, a very rich one that brings solutions not only for the end user, but it also enables you to make sure that things are done properly and that you can work with solutions that are complementary. And of course, they bring a higher degree of impact to the end user. So just making them, I would like to take advantage of the fact that we are here with countries from Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to share with you the information that we are putting together an ESCO's network along with OLADE and the global ESCO network. We have a representative here today who traveled from Denmark, who is coming from Denmark, and the idea is, of course, to transmit the experience that we have as unions, but also to align ourselves regarding the capacities and, of course, to show the successful stories in Chile with this integration modality. So this is an open invitation to participate, and you can contact me. Thank you. In 30 seconds, right? Okay, let me try. I would like to tell you that in OLADE we have been already having discussions, and probably very soon we will be able to inform about the creation of a teamwork for energy efficiency. We have actually hired a consultancy agency to put together a group of experts. We started back in July. That was our first milestone. And some countries we have volunteered to have these conversations. In our case, we also volunteered to coordinate this working group among different countries. And I think that OLADE is the ideal place to have this regional platform for integration, for us to be able to share experiences, good practices, and strengthening our medium and long-term goals, right, that we all must be compliant with. Thank you. As Fitzgerald was saying about the role of OLADE, I think that it is also important to integrate our Latin American networks. The benefits of implementing the lessons learned and the successful stories of other countries are huge. We are connected, but we are not completely connected in the best possible way. So sharing the benefits of each one of the public policies being applied in the countries should be very fruitful for the whole region. Very briefly, we are already going through this energy transition. In Latin America, our energy transition has been limited to the offer of energy. We have been focusing on developing noble capacities in many countries at a Latin American level. We are talking about storage, but nobody's paying attention to the demand of energy. And this is where we have the possibility to position ourselves in a better way, because this is going to be a crisis. And the electrical grid, the electrification will be also a crisis. We know that an e-car is going to be consuming 65% of energy. So this electrification network will be a challenge. So if we want to have this transition done in the best possible way, we need to take into consideration all the different aspects and all the different legs. Otherwise, the amount of energy that is renewable won't be enough in order to answer a demand that is going to really be very high in the near future. So we need to be ready, and we do this through regulations. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure I'm sure that we would be here for a couple more hours. We will continue to have topics to discuss, but thank you all. And the last invitation that I think that is the best way to make progress in energy efficiency is to add on our efforts, multiply the impact, and at the end of the road, the idea is to contribute with the compliance with the SDGs. As a region, we have a lot of things to do. Access to energy, generating job, and generating, of course, a sustainable and true development. Thank you, everybody, and I hope we can meet you again in the near future.